Welcome Aces to the History of Estovakia documentary. The Federal Republic of Estovakia is our antagonist country in the game Ace Combat 6 and is located on the eastern edge of the Anean continent. Estovakia has a population of 63.5 million people according to the 2014 census and is situated close to Stranger's North Pole, and a great deal of its territory is cold and mountainous. However, I should also mention that Estovakia has several islands and they will become more important when we get to the Estovakian Civil War. The first thing that we know about Estovakia is that on October 8th of 1990, some large offshore oil facilities located on the northeast of the country were abandoned. 4 years later, in 1994, the Ulysses asteroid was detected and was expected only to hit the continent of Usea. Because of that, the Anean countries did not take any particular measure since they were deemed safe from the meteor catastrophe. However, in 1998, a new space probe found that the Ulysses asteroid had a hollow interior, and because of that, the asteroid would shatter into several pieces. This new finding added the continent of Anea to the estimated area of impact, and the big thing about this is that the Anean countries had only roughly a year of notice to prepare for the fall of the asteroid. Emmeria, Estovakia's western neighbor, focused on building several underground shelters to protect the civilian population, while Estovakia went on the offensive by building a giant railgun called Chandelier on the northwest of the country in an attempt to intercept the fragments of the Ulysses asteroid. From July 8th to July 20th of 1999, fragments of the Ulysses asteroid began falling over Strangero. Fortunately for Emmeria, the strategy of constructing several underground bunkers worked. However, Estovakia was unable to complete construction of its giant asteroid intercepting railgun because they didn't have enough time and resources to finish the monumental and complex project. As a result, several fragments of the Ulysses asteroid rained down on Estovakia, destroying the country's economy, infrastructure, and taking a very high toll of civilian casualties. The road to Estovakia's recovery was going to be a long one, and thinking about this, the neighboring country of Emmeria started sending aid to Estovakia in an attempt to speed up Estovakia's recovery. However, in the year of 2000, the central Estovakian government had lost power because its leaders went into hiding after failing to properly deal with the disaster, and as a result, several smaller factions appeared around the country and managed to control small regions of Estovakia. And given that these factions started disrupting the flow of aid from Emmeria, the Emmerian government stopped its aid program to Estovakia. In the year of 2004, there was an initiative to merge all the three Anean countries, Estovakia, Emmeria and Nordnavik, into one called the Republic of Anea, and so the preparatory agency for the Republic of Anea was created. On a side note, this event only happened to address the issue that in Ace Combat 5, which takes place in the year of 2010, the continent of Anea is shown as if it was only one single country, since the borders between Estovakia, Emmeria and Nordnavik are not displayed on the map. Now let's go back to the documentary. Over the years, the internal problems within Estovakia continued, and in 2007, one faction called the Lees United Front, or LUF for short, took over the western portion of the country, including the country's capital. Emmeria, who was eager to restart its aid program, contacted the LUF about the idea, and the two sides began thinking about the deal. The LUF proposed its own project for Estovakia's rehabilitation to Emmeria, the Emmerians approved the idea, and soon after the Emmerians started sending aid to the LUF. Now, the Lees United Front was supposed to use that aid and money to help Estovakia's recovery after Ulysses, right? But that's not really what happened. They used the Emmerian funds to buy new weapons and vehicles, which in turn were used to suppress rival factions, and this resulted in an LUF expansion over the Estovakian territory. As time passed, the LUF's territory continued to grow, but this doesn't mean that there was no resistance. One particular city, the city of Gladina, refused to obey to LUF's rule, and because of this, the LUF's forces surrounded the city and cut off the city's lifelines. As a result, essential supplies including food and aid could not enter the city, and this move by the LUF ended with a massive starvation of the civilian population, resulting in over 200,000 deaths, this being the only known case of a genocide within Strangero. Outraged by the LUF's actions against the civilian population, several other factions in Estovakia rose to fight against the LUF, thus officially starting the Estovakian Civil War in the year of 2007. As you can see in this map, I have divided the Estovakian territory into 5 different regions. Each region represents one of the main factions during the Estovakian Civil War. However, 2 notes about this. First, this is only a map that I created for illustration purposes only, so please don't take it as an official map. And second, there were probably more factions in the conflict, but because they were smaller and less relevant, I have not included them in the map. These 5 factions are the Least United Front, the one who started the Civil War and is located on the western portion of the country and is being funded by Emmeria by using money from the Emmerian aid program to fuel its army, and for the record, this was happening without Emmeria's knowledge. The 3 next factions are the Independent Tariff Federation, the Island Coalition, and the Northern Highlands faction, which also joined the war to fight against the LUF. However, not much is known about them and they only play a minor role in the overall history of the conflict. Lastly, we have the Eastern faction to complete the 5 factions, and this one is quite important. The Eastern faction was led by General Gustav Dvornik, and when he mobilized his forces to fight in the Estovakian Civil War, he also hired mercenaries from Belka and North Ossia, which used to be South Belka before the Balkan War, to develop new weapons that were meant to be used in the conflict. One of the notable mercenaries that came from Belka was Lorenz Riedel, who served as Scout 7 during the Balkan War, and he brought Balkan technology coming from the XBO heavy command cruiser, which resulted in the development of the Aegean heavy command cruiser, together with its aerial fleet consisting of the Kodos and Gyges aircraft, which were responsible for ECM and air defense duties respectively. Moving away from the Civil War, in the year of 2008, the countries of Anea were represented on Strangero's G7 summit that was being hosted by Ossia on the Arkbird. However, shortly after that, the Republic of Anea project was frozen due to the ongoing Estovakian Civil War. As the Civil War progressed, the LUF managed to defeat and occupy territory that belonged to the Independent Tariff Federation, but its advance then stalled due to the rapid expansion of the front lines. Meanwhile, the Eastern faction had been able to absorb the Island Coalition and the Northern Highlands faction, therefore leaving the LUF and the Eastern faction as the 2 main powers left in the Civil War. Now, do you remember that large oil facility in northern Estovakia that I mentioned in the beginning of the video? As it happens, that facility had been abandoned in the year of 1990, but now in 2008, the Eastern faction took over that facility to start building the Aegean and the rest of the aerial fleet. During this time, the Eastern faction was also working on the Chandelier. However, they were not able to solve the heating problem and therefore they could not use it during the Civil War. 2 years later, in 2010, the Emmerian government finally stopped sending aid to the LUF because of the Civil War. However, it was already too late because the damage had already been done. The Eastern faction, seeing that Emmeria had been backing the LUF for the last 3 years of the conflict, now considered that Emmeria was just as bad as the LUF. And the bloody Estovakian Civil War continued for 3 more years until it was time for the final showdown. From January 15th to the 22nd of 2013, the LUF executed a large-scale land and sea assault against the Eastern faction that was meant to break the deadlock in the war. With overwhelming numbers, the LUF managed to put the Eastern faction's troops in a massive retreat, but this didn't last very long. Shortly after, the Eastern faction deployed its aerial fleet, the Strigan team and the Vampire team on a counterattack mission. The tide of the war had quickly changed, and in this counterattack, the aerial fleet and its supporting squadrons managed to destroy about 80% of the LUF's forces in just 1 week. It didn't last very long and the Eastern faction defeated the LUF shortly after in a battle close to the Eslovakian-Emmerian border, a battle in which Lieutenant General Lees, the leader of the LUF, was killed. With the Civil War now over, The Eastern faction then created a new central government under the command of the generals, which included military commanders of the Eastern faction and was primarily led by General Gustav Dvornik. Later in the month of November of 2013, the Estovakian foreign minister Isaac Arensky was about to go on a trip to Emmeria in order to attend a conference. However, his vehicle was attacked while he was going to the airport. Foreign Minister Arensky was knocked out by a grenade that was thrown at him, and he died a couple of days later on December 2nd. Many people believe that this incident was orchestrated by members of the Eastern faction, since Arensky and the Estovakian Prime Minister at the time, Jakob Schuker, had bad relations. However, at least the official blame was put on surviving members of the least united front when the minister's death was announced, something that happened only in 2014 because his death was kept as a secret in December of 2013. In 2014, the year after the end of the Civil War, Estovakia faced the following situation: unemployment rate of over 40%, infrastructure destroyed or non-existent, and the country was even under threat of armed groups spread across the country that wanted to proclaim independence from the central government. The Armhurst Research Institute, an organization located in Emmeria, estimated that without any international assistance, the country of Estovakia would take over 30 years to recover its economy to the levels of the 1990s, the pre-Ulysses levels. Trying to help their neighboring country, the Emmerians once more restarted their aid program to Estovakia. On February 4th, there was actually a conference between the two nations to discuss this topic. And while Emmeria said it had no intention of stopping the aid program, the Emmerians also said that they feared that the program could be used to fuel and develop another military dictatorship, and therefore repeat the failure that had previously happened during the Civil War, with Emmeria backing the LUF. Estovakia's new foreign minister, Antonín Koznik, a former captain of the navy for the Eastern faction and the one who replaced Foreign Minister Arensky, stated that Emmeria was partially responsible for the Estovakian Civil War by assisting the LUF. However, the Emmerian ambassador Bell stated that it wasn't the case, and this aid program was only supposed to go to the early rehabilitation of Estovakia and not to support the LUF and its atrocities. The Emmerian ambassador even continued, and she said, quote, "Has she ever thought about their position of being assisted? I cannot help think that she is trying to take Estovakians' frustrations out on us Emmerians." End quote. Because of a discussion like this, the tensions between the two nations increased. Jumping to April of 2015, a Yuktubanian spy satellite was able to spot the Aigaion at the oil facility located in northeast Estovakia, and finally on August 30th of 2015, Estovakia declared war and invaded Emmeria, thus starting the Emmerian-Estovakian War, also known as the Anean Continental War. The most important factor that led to this war was the Estovakian hatred towards Emmeria, since Emmeria financed the Estovakian Civil War through its aid program. However, another possible reason in addition to that, and please take this as my personal opinion and not as a fact since it's not confirmed, is that because of the horrible economic situation in the home front, the Estovakian generals wanted to rally the citizens' patriotic feelings and unite them against a common enemy by performing a rapid invasion of the country that had financed their civil war, Emmeria. This would serve as a distraction to the Estovakian population and their problems at home, something that has happened in real life and was one of the causes of the Falklands War in 1982 between Argentina and the UK. Coming back to the story, Estovakia invaded Emmeria and quickly took over the country. Of course, these are the events covered in Ace Combat 6 Fires of Liberation, and I will not explain the Emmerian-Estovakian War in detail this time. Instead, I'll leave that to another video. What you do have to know is that even though Estovakia deployed its aerial fleet and the Strigan Squadron, the Estovakians were unable to defend themselves from the Emmerian counterattack, and even though they deployed their giant railgun Chandelier, which was now ready, they could not win the conflict. The Emmerian-Estovakian War ended sometime after April 1st of 2016, the day when the Chandelier was destroyed, as there was a coup d'etat in Estovakia that overthrew the generals and formed a new government, a government which quickly restored peace between the two countries. So this was the history of Estovakia, a stranger documentary compiling everything we know about the country. I would like to thank the Acepedia staff for the help I've got in the research phase of this video, and if you want to know some more additional details about Estovakia and related topics, you can take a look at the description. Also, in a fun fact, remember that first Estovakian foreign minister which was named Isaac? Well, this might be a reference to Vice Admiral George Isaac Anea from the Argentine Navy, who was involved in the Falklands War and even planned a sabotage operation against ships from the Royal Navy in Gibraltar. Anyways, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video and that you can share it with other aces as well to spread the Ace Combat lore. This was Ace Combat Fan, and stay tuned to the channel for more Ace Combat.